Alrighty, hi everyone. Happy Monday. Everybody's joining in here. How's everyone doing today? Oh, well, I hope everybody's having a great day so far. I hope everybody did something fun over the weekend. Most importantly, I hope everybody was sewing over the weekend too. It was a little bit cold over the weekend, and I didn't want to go out and do anything. So, hello from snowy Ohio. Hi, Karen. Hello from snowy Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I slipped a little bit not too long ago, so definitely snowy out there. But I'm letting everybody jump in here real quick. So, from Springfield, we didn't get too much snow, Linda, but just enough. Just enough for me to slip. I have to laugh about that. Super, super funny. So could you turn on this one real quick? But yeah, sewing all weekend, that's right. That's what I was doing too. So I have a really fun little video for you guys today. So I know that we always talk about a lot of the bigger machines that we carry, a lot of stuff with embroidery, but I know that there are so many new beginners to sewing that do watch us too, that are always recommended. So today I wanted to show you guys our top 3 picks from Baby Lock for beginner sewing machines. So I'm going to go over 3 separate ones that are our favorite that we always recommend. I have the Baby Lock Joy, the Baby Lock Jubilant, and the Baby Lock Brilliant today. And I'm going to show you guys all 3 of those machines and kind of show how when you go up the line, you get a little bit more features that make sewing super fun. But I know there's a lot of people out there that do watch us all the time that have an older machine that are ready just to jump up to a newer one that have more decorative stitches or one-step buttonholes or some of the features that really make sewing easy and enjoyable. So I'm going to talk about these 3 today just because there's so many great features with them, and I want to make sure that we make sewing available to everyone. So these are like the 3 entry models that we really love. But I'm going to start off with the Baby Lock Joy over here and kind of show how it works and the different stitches that you have with it and some of the different accessories. So this is the Baby Lock Joy, and this is the first one in their lineup that we always recommend because it has some of the features that we really like the needle threader here, our drop-in bobbin, and we also have about 20 different stitch options. So I'm going to show you guys how you'll thread it, how you'll set it up, how to use the needle threader, switching out the feet, and just kind of go over all the basics with it. So, and if you've never used a sewing machine before, this is always going to be a really good beginner-friendly one because it gives you the basics that you need for starting off really any project that you want to. So let's even start off with the very basics, which is winding a bobbin here. So on our machine, there is a little guide kind of engraved on here that shows the threading path. So if we're going to wind a bobbin, which is going to be our bobbin or our bottom thread to make our stitch, we'll go through this guide here, and then we're also going to wrap around this little tension disc once, just like that. And then with our bobbin here, there's these little holes. So we are going to thread through one of the holes from the inside. Just like that. And then we're going to set this on here. And then we're going to push this metal winder part to the side so that it activates that belt to wind the bobbin. And we'll press down on our foot control and it will start winding it. So we'll wind a little bit and then I cut that thread just like that and I'll wind it the rest of the way. And so whenever I first started sewing in high school, we sewed on machines very, very similar to the Joy here. And so everybody starts somewhere. But we could wind our bobbin just as filled as we need. So you could go all the way till it stops or just about there. We'll snip our thread and we're going to push to the side here to release it. And then we have our bobbin. So really, really easy to wind. So we're going to pop this top cover right here And we're going to remove this one that I already had from before. And then on this top cover, I'm going to just put some fabric behind it so maybe they could see. Maybe I'll do a different color. There's a little engraved line on there that kind of just shows putting the bobbin in along with some of the different seam allowance widths right here. But to kind of show you guys, we're going to make the letter P with our thread tail. So some machines will do a Q, and then with the baby locks here, they all do a P. So we're going to do that. We're going to drop that in here. And then there's a little groove that we're going to just feed this through here, kind of like that, and make sure that we go all the way through that and just make sure it's spinning. And we'll snip our thread and we'll put this cover back on. And then we're going to thread the machine. So coming back from the very beginning here from our spool pin, we're going to go through all the steps here. So it's kind of like making a U. We're going to come up. I'm going to lift up using my hand wheel on the side of the machine here, this hook, and we want to make sure we catch this. Now, every single sewing and embroidery machine has this hook right here. So always, always, always make sure that you catch this. Otherwise, that will throw off your tension. And then we're going to come above the eye of the needle. So we are going to go behind this little spot right here. Just like that. And then to use our needle threader, we'll come down here. So it kind of pushes down just like this. If it doesn't come down all the way, you might have your needle be too high up or too far down, because if we see, I can't get it down past that. So we want to just make sure we have our needle all the way up, seeing that hook right there. So we'll come down, and then we're going to thread through this, kind of making an L, and you'll be able to feel it catch. And it's hard to do without having my hand in the way, so I do apologize about that. There we go. So you'll feel it catch that little thread, and it makes a little loop behind the needle here so that we could pull through our thread. Now that was a really long thread tail there, so I'm going to just trim that. But that's how that needle threader works. And then before we start stitching with it, we're going to use our hand wheel and turn towards us to bring up our bottom thread, just like that. And then we'll pull that out. And you just want to make sure that you pull that up before you start here. That way nothing gets tangled and nothing's in the way. And then we'll pull to the back. I usually just kind of trim off. Now, with these three little knobs here, because I want everybody to know the uses and purposes of them before I start stitching. So we have our stitch selector right here. So all these different little numbers and, well, letters on this one will correlate with the different stitches that you could do with the joy right here. So if I select A, that's going to be my straight stitch. And then this knob right here is going to be our stitch length. So right now at a 1, that's pretty tiny, so my stitches are going to be spaced very close together. For quilting projects, or usually any project, I like to do about a 2.5 to a 3 for all of my seams. And then this last knob right here is our width of the needle. So whenever I use it in a straight stitch, we could see how my needle is going to move side to side. So I'm going to set it right here towards the end at number 5 to kind of be in the center. Now, whenever we do a different stitch like a zigzag, I'm going to show you guys how that width knob is going to come into play. Same with the length. So, now we have a little lift on the side right here on the inside. So this will raise and lower our presser foot. And you want to make sure that your foot is lowered whenever you start sewing, if you're new to sewing, because if you have your foot raised, it's not going to feed through your fabric. It would just stitch in the same place. So we want to make sure that's lowered. And then we can start sewing here. Now, this knob here on the side is our reverse lever. So at the beginning and end of every seam, you want to do a couple stitches forward, a couple stitches backward to secure it. And then whenever you're done, kind of lift up your foot here. And if we see how I'm pulling this, right now my threads are still tied. So I will use the hand wheel and turn towards me until I feel them release, and then I can easily pull. But that's kind of your basic straight stitch. So if you're sewing a seam, we could follow along the different seam allowances on the side here to make our project, whether it's quilting or if we're making a garment or a bag. So we have all our different seam allowances on the side. But now for another stitch, let's say we want to do a zigzag stitch. So we'll switch our stitch selector over here to BC. And then let's go ahead and lower our foot. And I'm going to make my length a little longer here to start off. And I'm going to make my width a little bit smaller. And so we could see this is a really long and narrow zigzag, but maybe I want something wider. So I want to make my length smaller to a 1, but I'm going to make my width the biggest. And now I'll have a much shorter but wider zigzag. So that's how we use those different knobs here with the Joy. And we could see the difference of those. So the first one here, trimming my little loose thread out of the way, was a long but narrow zigzag. So maybe if I was sewing a knit fabric, and then this zigzag right here is shorter but wider. So maybe if I was finishing off the edge of a fabric, or if I was using it as a decorative element for maybe a bag, or kind of bar tacking on a pair of jeans. So, and then we also have this additional category of stitches down here, some which could be used as decorative, some are overcast. So let's pick D right here, which is this really cool little cross stitch design. So we're going to turn our knob this way until we get to the center there with stitch selector. That's what SS stands for. And then let's go ahead and do D. And we'll lower our foot. And then it will stitch out that decorative stitch there. Then we could back stitch at the beginning and end. So it makes that little cross stitch design there. Maybe I would honestly want to shorten my width a little bit with that. But then we could see here, that's how you use those different stitches. And you do get the basic feet that come with the machine. So you have your standard utility foot, which is called A, which is in the center there. And then you also get your zipper foot here. So if you are sewing like a little pencil bag or maybe the fly of a pair of pants, you're able to use a zipper foot here to get really close to that zipper. And then you also have your buttonhole foot here, which the Joy has a 4-step buttonhole. So you'll have to individually kind of space your zigzags, your second part, your third part, and your fourth part, which you would use this part of the knob right here and follow along those steps. So that's a little overview of the Baby Lock Joy, which is a really great beginner machine. Now the next one I have here is going to be the Baby Lock Jubilant. So this one has all of those same features, but a little bit more to it. So this is their first computerized machine in the lineup, which is absolutely one of our favorites because you have a lot of great features in here that really elevate, you know, a basic sewing machine like the Joy to make sewing a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit easier and user-friendly. So, and I have a cute little stitch out of some of the different decorative stitches in here, along with the different buttonholes as well. So I'm going to go over with the overview of this machine here now and show you guys a lot of the differences on what makes the Jubilant just such an amazing machine. So, whenever we see this, we have our little quick reference decorative stitch guide up here, and that sits right on the handle, so you could take that off at any time. You also have a reference of all those different stitches right here. So there's 80 different decorative stitches with the Jubilant here, plus one additional one with this cute little alligator. That's actually an additional one, so technically 81. Now, what makes it different is going to be a lot of the differences here, like the bobbin winder. We have this really cool feature called speed control. So whenever I'm actually sewing, I don't have to be worried if I accidentally press down super hard on the foot control, and I can evenly pace myself. And then we have our reverse stitch button here, and then a few other buttons that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So I want to start off with the basic sew, and let's wind a bobbin here on the Jubilant. So I'm going to unthread my machine, because this is one of the big differences I like to show you guys here. So we'll follow through our threading guide up here, and then we're going to come back through here, and then we're going to wrap around that tension disc one time. Now, instead of threading through that tiny little hole on your bobbin, you could actually just set that right on this bobbin winder right here, and then wrap around about 5 to 6 times. And then there is a little thread cutter on this little wheel here that your bobbin sits on, just like that. So you could cut that thread instead of having to hold that little piece of thread through there. And then we're going to shift this to the side, and we'll press down on our foot control, and we could start winding our bobbin. Now, something that's really cool with the Jubilant here is I can control the speed at which I wind my thread. So on the slowest here with that speed control, I can move up and it will start to wind faster. Now, if I was doing a quilting cotton thread, I might want to wind this at the slowest, because with cotton thread, that can stretch out, and that's the thread that we use when we specifically do quilting, because over time, quilts do age and stretch out with that fabric. But with other thread, I can wind as fast as I need. So that's a really nice little feature right there. And then when we're done, we can just stop it by using this little start and stop button. We could also wait till it finishes winding too, but now that we're done, I'm just going to push to the side, lift off the bobbin here, and I'm going to use that little thread cutter just to cut that thread. And that is just such a nice little feature right there, that we could just cut our threads with this little disc that sits right here on the machine. Super, super easy, and it saves you the hassle of constantly taking your scissors and trying to snip, and then you have a lot of loose threads all over you. Now, the way that the bobbin drops in on the Jubilant here is pretty similar. However, there's a little extra piece to it here. So there's a little engraved thread guide right here. And we'll do a P for perfect again. We'll drop that in, but we're going to follow along that guide. And then there's also a little thread cutter right there that will just cut that little loose thread for us. So really easy to use. There's kind of a thread cutter in every spot of the machine that you would have to cut your threads at. And then we'll put that cover back over it. Now, whenever we thread the machine, we'll follow through all the steps like we did. And then let's go ahead and lift up that little lever right there so we could catch that upper looper. And then we're going to once again come down and we're going to go above the eye of the needle still. So the little part here that's number 6 looks a little bit different than the joy. So we'll snap it in between this little metal wire. And I like to hold the thread like a little piece of dental floss and come from the back there, pull through just like that. You don't want it to knot or anything in this step. And then we have this little needle threader here, which is a little different, but it's a lot nicer. So we're going to come up through this metal part right here, and then we're going to go in between this plastic part on number 7, as we could see on the guide. And then there is a thread cutter on the side here that we could cut that thread. So that's just how we want to do that. You want to use that thread cutter. You don't want too much slack on the thread. And then one thing I always say to double check is make sure that your needle is going to be in the correct position for your threader. So if you want to have it in the absolute perfect position, we have this needle up and down button. So usually I like to just hit that, and then we'll come down, we'll thread that. We just kind of push down and it makes that knot for us. And then I could pull that through just like that. Really, really easy to thread this machine. Now we have our lift on the side here as well. So this will raise and lower the presser foot. We'll pull our threads to the back. And then we could start stitching on this. And what's really nice too about the Jubilant is the back part of the plate here is metal, and it has a lot more engravings for different seam allowances, like 1/4 inch, 5/8. So. And then we could start sewing. Oh, let me unplug and replug my foot control real quick. There we go. So let's go ahead and start off our stitch. So we could back stitch right here in the beginning. And then let's say we're getting close to a corner here. You know, I might need to end off my stitch. Now, what's really nice about the Jubilant here is instead of back stitching, so maybe we're doing quilting, we don't want to have any visible back stitching, or we're top stitching a garment, or my favorite, as I always say, is let's say we're sewing like a women's blouse, and usually with the darts, you're not supposed to back stitch, you have to hand tie off a knot. So we actually have this little knot button right here that will tie off a knot for us, which is super, super cool. So instead of back stitching, I could do that twice, and then I like to just kind of pull out to the side here, and then I can just trim my threads. And it actually does tie a little knot for us here instead of back stitching. So that's another unique way that you could end off a stitch with the Jubilant here. And I would just cut my threads and I would be done. Now, there's also a lot of different decorative stitches with the Jubilant as well. So we can select all of our different stitches here with this knob. So as I rotate it, we could see the number increase. So let's say I'm going to do number We'll do number 58. And so I can remove the feet on the Jubilant so they all snap on. There is this little release in the back of this with the ankle shank, and the foot just comes off really easily. And you have a selection of feet that come with the machine. So we have our buttonhole foot, our zipper foot. This is our button sewing foot, our overcast foot, along with our two most used feet, our utility stitch foot, which is J, and our decorative stitch foot, which is N. So whenever you have a decorative stitch or any stitch, it will actually tell you which foot to use with the machine, which is really cool that it will tell you the recommended foot. So let's put the N foot on with this decorative stitch here. And using the right feet for your stitch really helps make a difference as well. And so we'll put the foot down, and we could stitch out this fun little feathered one. Now, another nice little feature about that little knot button right there is, so as we're sewing our rows of decorative stitches, and maybe we're making like a quilt block where we're embellishing a garment, and we want to make sure that we kind of end off at like the last sequence of that stitch. Maybe we don't want to start the next one, right? I can hit this little knot button right here, and it's going to turn green. And whenever it hits the last step of that sequence of a stitch, it's going to stop and tie off a little knot there. And then I could lift up my foot, take to the side, and cut my threads. And it stopped right at the last stitch of that last feather right there. So that's a really nice feature if you are using some of those decorative stitches, maybe to embellish something or kind of upcycle something. It's a really helpful feature. Now, one of my favorite features too, especially since I started off making clothes when I started sewing, is the one-step buttonhole feature on the Jubilant. And this makes buttonholes really, really easy to sew rather than a four-step buttonhole, because we could pull down this little lever here, which lets the machine know how big to make the buttonhole. And then with this buttonhole foot here, we can insert our button in the back. I'm going to use a spool cap here, and we'll just lock that in. And then we'll snap on our foot here. And we just want to make sure that this pull down part is in between those two little notches on the buttonhole foot. That way, when it pushes against it, it lets the machine know to begin the next side. And then let's insert our fabric here, put our foot down. And we can see there's a lot of different types. So you have keyhole buttonholes with different types, your standard buttonholes. You even have buttonholes for knit fabrics as well. So let's pick number 48. And then what's really cool too is we can actually sew without our foot controller plugged in. So whenever I do a buttonhole, I kind of like to unplug it here. And then I'll use this start stop button to kind of let the machine do all the work for me. And what I really love about that start stop button is it makes the machine very accessible for a lot of people. I know that there are a lot of people that maybe don't have access to using their legs or even their feet. So we like to use that button for a couple different purposes. Oh, I think I didn't thread my machine, or I came unthreaded. So we'll redo it here. So we'll stitch that out one more time since I came unthreaded. Here we go. So we'll just re-thread this right here using that needle threader. And then we'll sew out another button. Really, really easy to thread. So we'll do that one more time. But with the selection of different feet, it's a really great starter machine, especially because you kind of get everything that you would need to get started off with, you know, having the buttonhole feet, your overcast feet. So you could really start tackling any project that you want with confidence, especially with the Jubilant. That's why it is one of my favorite ones to start off if you are kind of new to sewing. We'll trim those loose threads there, trim the threads on the back. And then just like that, that's how you could do a one-step buttonhole on the Jubilant. And then just to kind of show you guys that start and stop button without the foot controller plugged in, let's go ahead and put our regular foot back on. And let's grab a new piece of fabric here. Pull our threads to the back. So I could use that start stop button, and let's do stitch number 1 or 3. And I could start sewing just with this button alone. So very accessible, and I could also slow that speed down as well. We could pivot our fabric. So really, really easy to use. And it's nice and lightweight. So if you are traveling or on the go, it's really easy with you to take to class with you, or maybe you're like me, you go up your sister's for the weekend to go see her. It's a nice machine that's nice and portable and not very heavy at all. You also have a couple different buttons over here, which I didn't show. So if you need to adjust your stitch length, so let's use a zigzag to show this. So we'll go to number 8. And if I want to make my zigzag shorter here, I could go down to the point as well, and then I can control my width. And you have an even bigger width on the Joy here, or I'm sorry, than the Joy. On the Joy, you only have 5 millimeters. On the Jubilant, you have 7 millimeters for stitch width. So I can make a really nice wide zigzag stitch. And then just like that, it's really easy to adjust anything. So there's a lot of really great features with the Jubilant here. Now also, I want to mention another thing, that this tray right here comes off and it gives you the free arm. And that's on all of the machines here. So they all have this free arm. So if you are sewing something tubular, you could run it through on this section right here. But this one here is the Baby Lock Jubilant, one of our absolute favorite machines for somebody just starting off, getting into quilting or sewing or bag making. There's so many great features on here that really makes it user-friendly. The biggest one I would say is the speed control, because I know that could be super, super intimidating to somebody that's just starting off with sewing, is, you know, pressing down on the foot control and afraid that you're going to take off. So you can really set that to just a few stitches at a time. That way you could start practicing with confidence as well. Now, one more machine to show you guys today, which is going to be the next one up in the lineup, is going to be the Baby Lock Brilliant. And I really, really like this machine. It's a step up from the Jubilant here, and there's a lot of really amazing features with it. One of the first things that you're going to notice off the bat is that it is a little bit bigger. So from the Jubilant here, that you have 6 inches of throat space. On the Brilliant, you have 8 inches. So it's a little bit bigger, especially if you're doing quilts or like lap quilts or baby quilts, so that you could wrap them around. But same with garments as well, because sometimes that extra 2 inches of throat space really makes a difference in being able to pull through a bigger project as you're sewing it. So whenever we lift up the top cover here, we have a nice quick reference of all of the different stitches that we have here. So with the Brilliant, I believe there's around 120 different stitches, and you also have these lettering stitches as well, which I think is super, super awesome. Now, let's take a piece of fabric here, because we have all the same features, but threading it is just the same too. It just looks slightly different because your thread's going to sit more towards the front than the back. Winding a bobbin is going to be the same as well with the speed control. But we also have one additional function on this machine, and that's going to be this scissor button, which we absolutely love. And having a thread cutter really just helps the sewing process go much smoother and much easier. So let's start sewing here. We have our manual lift in the back of the machine to lift up our presser foot. And then I have my foot control plugged in. So let's just start stitching here. And it's really smooth. So let's say I'm going to tie off my threads here and use that little knot button. Maybe I'll hit that twice. But then I could use this thread cutter button. And that actually cuts the threads for us. So I'm not pulling out these really long tails. It cut them perfectly for me to do that little knot at the end. So if you're doing multiple rows of stitching or quilting, or you're working on maybe a bag, a garment, anything, just being able to, backstitch, but then trim off here so that we're not pulling these really long thread tails out and having to trim a bunch and then being covered with threads really just makes the sewing process much smoother and much easier, and also so much more enjoyable as well, which is what I really love about the Brilliant here. Now, another thing to note too is actually when threading it. So with the Jubilant next to it, you push down and you kind of have the thread go through and you lift up. It's just about the same thing here whenever you're threading this machine. However, it's going to be all in one swipe. So you don't have to kind of lift up and take up like you do with this one. This one is just one swipe, so it's even easier to thread the needle. And then another really cool thing too is that you have these lettering stitches that you can actually program for different things. So if you want to embellish something, put your name on it. I saw this really cute idea where somebody made a little love letter using a piece of fabric, and they used these decorative stitches here to kind of make a little thank you note or a little I love you note, which would have been perfect for Valentine's Day. So let me show you guys how you could program those. And you have even more editing functions as well, which I really like. So if we want to get into different categories of stitches here, they're actually categorized for us. So if I want to do a decorative stitch, let's hit the little leaf icon here, and then I could pick maybe number 14. Select that, and that will program that for me here on the screen. It also tells me which foot to use, what number I was using, and my width along as my length, which I can control with these buttons right here. But if I want to do a lettering stitch here, let's go to the letter, and then let's go ahead and clear out. So we'll use this little clear button right here to clear any other stitch out we had out of the way. And then let's go ahead and select our letters. So if I want to do the first font, I just hit that once. If I maybe want to do cursive or this outline font, I'll just hit that the same amount of times and it will show up here which one you're on. So let's go ahead and do maybe just the cursive one here. And maybe I want to type out my name. So let's type out John. So we'll type in all the numbers of the letters, just following along this guide here. So we'll type in John. There we go, 14. And now I can actually stitch that out. So this is a really fun way if you want to embellish anything, maybe add your name on the inside of like a little lunch bag. And I'm going to put the end foot on here.
We have a couple questions too, John.
Alrighty.
Does the Brilliant have a low bobbin light?
Oh, low bobbin light. So if you do run out of thread, it will actually sense that and let you know.
Does the thread cutter not or only cut the thread?
So the thread cutter button right here, this one cuts the thread. And then this button right here, the little knot button, this is what knots it. So I usually knot it first and then I'll use the cutter.
Patty says, I'm a little confused. I've never heard of any machine knotting the thread when it gets cut.
So Patty, I'll show that one more time. So on these machines, instead of back stitching, you can actually tie off a knot. So let's cut off our thread right there since we finished that decorative stitch. So I was able to stitch out my name right there. So that's really fun if I want to maybe embellish something in a cursive font right there in stitches. And then to show that knot feature again. So let's say we're sewing here and let's sew on an angle. So maybe I'm doing a dart on a blouse here. Let's go ahead and switch back to our first category of stitches. And we'll pick that straight stitch number 3. So I can back stitch at the beginning and end here. Oh, I unplugged my foot control. So let's plug this back in. This would be a really big dart, but let's say I'm coming to the end of it, right? So instead of back stitching, which we wouldn't want to do, we could hit this button right here, which is going to tie off a little knot. And so I like to hit that 2 times, and then I can cut it. And that ties a little knot for me right on the edge of that seam, but the same instead of back stitching. So you're able to tie off a knot on the machine instead of doing that by hand with long threads. So that's a really cool function that you have. But so this here is going to be the Baby Lock Brilliant, and there's just so many great features with it as well, along with some more stitch editing possibilities. So if you maybe want to mirror a stitch, so let's pick number 19 here. And instead of it going this way, if I need it to go the opposite way, I could hit this little mirror button and it will actually flip it. So that's another great option that we have too when it comes to being able to edit our stitches a little bit as well. And then you even have a couple more buttonhole options. So you have really cool ones that you could do with darning. And then you also have the ability to do a eyelet as well, which is really helpful, especially if you're making some more fun projects like baseball hats, or sometimes we don't want to use a grommet, so you could actually use number 71 there to stitch out an eyelet instead. But this here is going to be the Baby Lock Brilliant. Now, with all of these machines, I do have them all available as well, and I have a really good deal on the Brilliant. So we actually have a few ones that are left from our fall event. So they're classroom models at a reduced price. So it's a really great way to get one of the higher machines at a way better price point. But I'm going to go through those all one more time as well, just from start to finish with all the machines that I showed. So starting off, I do have the Baby Lock Joy in the bubble right now. So that is one of the very most basic entry-level ones. It is a fully mechanical machine. So if you want to dip your feet into the sewing world and you haven't touched sewing at all before, it's one of the most budget-friendly models to start with. And then the next one I have in the lineup is going to be the Jubilant, which is going to be one of my personal picks as well, because you have a lot more features with it, and especially that speed control button as well, which really helps any beginner kind of pace themselves whenever they're sewing. That makes it a lot easier to do as well. And then finally, I also have the Brilliant in the lineup as well, and I have the Classroom model. So that would be my overall pick of the machines, especially because you have that thread cutter button. And I just remember when I first started sewing in high school, we sewed with machines very similar to the Joy. I always had a bunch of threads on me, so it's less winding bobbins, a lot more tidier and neater. So really, really helps you kind of stay organized as well. And we have the Joy in the lineup now, so we didn't have it in the bubble before. But feel free to save this video too and use it as a reference video for maybe all of you guys that are new to sewing, that are just kind of joining in with us for the first time. It kind of goes over threading the machines and using some of the different features and functions with it as well. Now, I also do have some accessories that go with the machines, and I want to start off with my two, as I say, must-have accessories, which is going to be an extension table. So I do have extension tables here for the Joy and the Brilliant. They don't, or for the Jubilant and the Brilliant. They don't make one for the Joy, unfortunately. So whenever you're using these extension tables, it extends your workspace. So on the bottom of them here, this one is the Jubilant. So these little feet lift up here to even out this table. And this helps keep everything nice and level whenever you're sewing, especially if you're working on some of those bigger projects. So let's go ahead here. We'll take off our little regular sewing extension tray, and then this is going to slide in and replace it. And there's a little bit of an overlap right here, but this helps really extend your workspace so that everything is nice and level. And I always, always, always recommend getting an extension table that fits your machine, because sometimes you're working on something that's a little heavier, whether it's a jacket or a quilt or a bag. You really want to be able to keep it evened out so it's less pressure sliding off, so that you can keep everything feeded through nice and smooth. Now, the next one I have in the lineup as well is going to be the Brilliant extension table. So that will go on the same exact way, but it's a little bit bigger. So it fits this machine here, and the same. You have all of these feet here that just lift up, and then this slides on as well. I might be out of a little bit of table space here. But just like that. So that really extends your workspace with these machines right here. And especially with the Brilliant, because if we are quilting and working on a big project, we want to make sure that it's a nice and leveled out. Alrighty, so let's go down the lineup, because I also have some very beginner-friendly sewing tools that you might need if you are just getting started here. So the first one here is actually one of my favorite ones, because when I first started sewing, I was really interested in making clothes. And I absolutely love this tool right here. So this is our point press and pounding block, which is super useful for so many different features here. So let's say we're sewing a seam and we're quilting, right? Usually we like to press those seam allowances flat just so that they are nice and neat. Hi, Kathy. How are you doing?
Yeah. Can you see me? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Hi.
Join in and say hi, Kathy.
I just wanted to say something real quick. Hi, everybody.
She's sneaking in here.
What are we showing today? Hi, everybody.
I'm showing a lot of great beginner sewing
I know,
machines
that's what
here.
I needed here. I needed to jump on one of these and sew a seam.
Yep.
You've got them all set up. Oh, I love this little Joy. Thanks.
So, let's say, you know, we're pressing something. So whether it's a seam allowance and we want it to lay really, really flat, or even a hem of something, we use this pounding block here after we iron. So let me show you guys how this works.
How about that?
So let's say that we're ironing this, right? And that lays really flat as is. However, if you want to make it lay even flatter, we use this pounding block here to really press down that seam, which really helps give it a nice crease and press. And that's the same if you were doing, you know, pressing a seam allowance open as well. But I absolutely love this. And the same if you're doing a shirt collar. So those are those really weird angles that you're trying to press those seams open. So you're able to lay that collar over here so that you could kind of press that open along this block. Now, I also have a really fantastic price on these. They're only $17.88. When I bought my first one, I think I got ripped off because I paid almost $90 for mine, which I wish I would have saw this one because that's an even better deal. So I always recommend that everybody gets one of these because whenever you do press your seams open and using this to really help set that seam in, it gives you such a more professional finish and high-end look. Now, I also have something new for us today, which are these new Panasonic irons that we got in black and white. So, if you are looking for a more modern and sleek looking iron, we absolutely love these ones. I have the rose gold one opened next door, but why don't I open one of these? Which color? Black or white? I'm kind of leaning black.
Navy.
Navy, it's navy.
Yes. Or blue marine.
Blue marine. It is navy. It looked black to me. I guess I'm losing my eyesight here a little bit. So why don't we open one of these just to show you guys. Now, these ones here have a 10-minute timer. So if you are like me and can be forgetful and you're worried as you're leaving for work, like, oh my gosh, did I leave my iron turned on? This has a nice 10-minute timer in between. They heat up super fast as well. What we love about them is that they are cordless. So you can kind of walk around with it into different areas. So it's like I'm doing a little unboxing video here. So they all come in this really nice case here, which makes them perfect if you are on the if you're traveling and on the go. And then these will lift up right here. And this is a brand new color because I haven't seen this one before. So look at that. This one's navy. Actually, this one's really sharp. I like this one a lot. So you have this nice double-ended sole plate here that really makes it nice if you are pressing a point, but they're nice and lightweight and handheld. So let's say we want to put water in it. We will lift this open here and we'll dump our water in. We have different settings as well. So we have dry iron, we have steam if we need it, and we can control the heat as well. And then this part here just recharges it. And then our cord wraps around and wraps in. So it makes it really nice to be able to travel with. And then whenever we're done and, you know, we are done with our project sewing, you could put this in its nice little carrying case and be on our way with it. So it is really perfect too if you're going to class, you're going to a quilt retreat, or, you know, maybe you're going somewhere for the weekend, and it just stays super nice and compact. So I have two brand new colorways with this. As you guys know, we use these irons a lot here. We probably have about 10 different of those irons opened throughout both of our buildings here. But these two new colorways are navy, and then we also have white. So really cool. Now, I also did forget to mention too, that if you are new here shopping with us, or if, you know, as we like to say, a repeat offender, we do offer credit back on all of your purchases. So today it is set at 10% for any of the accessories that we're showing. The sewing machines are excluded from that 10% credit back. Now, let's see what else we got here. So what's this? Choose Kindness fabric. Oh, so this is something brand new. So if you're looking for...
The first one is the designs, the pattern, and the panel.
Okay, so this is Tommy's, right?
Yes.
So I love to show this. Let's see here. So there's this really cool panel right here. And this is going to be Tommy's design here that he's doing with this project. So you have this really cool Choose Kindness quilt with this beautiful panel in there. So let's open this up. So if you're looking at tackling a quilt or you want to start a really fun project here, you have this nice panel of all of these different fabrics. And then I think the one I have in the bundle is going to be actually for our embroidery lovers. So Tommy, who is Gloria's son, one of the owners here, he is our in-house embroidery digitizer. So if you are on the embroidery end of machines, you can actually make a lot of the quilt blocks all in the hoop, which is really, really cool. So being able to make those blocks just by hitting a button and you let the machine stitch for you is super awesome. We could see all of the different details that goes into his work here. So all kind of like the echo stitching that fits in, the decorative satin stitch as well, along with the cute little fills that go in here. So he's digitizing this so that you could do this whole quilt with embroidery to really add definition and texture and really elevate it as well. So his design for it is going to be on pre-order here, and you will get the 10% back with that as well. So if you want to make this quilt, do all of those blocks in embroidery to really elevate it, you'll be able to order that design now. And then I also have the fabric kit, which I believe you're going to get the panel, and you'll get all of the different fabrics.
The panel's not included in the fabric.
The panel, okay, so the panel is not included with the fabric kit.
The panel is included with the design.
The panel is included with the design. Thank you for letting me know that, Sophie. So let's put the design first with this.
That's the first bundle that was in the bubble. So it's the design, the panel, and the pattern.
Okay, so you'll get the design, the panel, and the pattern here, which gets you started. Now, if you want the correct fabrics that go with this quilt that Tommy is doing here, we have the fabric kit, which it looks like they're going to give you all the fabrics you'll need for the different blocks. And minus the backing. So it gives you all the fabrics that you'll need for it. All right, and then I have the Choose Kindness backing as well here. So is this the backing? Is this one the backing?
No, the backing's like a flower.
Okay, well, we're gonna let Sophie grab that, and I'm gonna kind of jump onto some of the next things. So we'll revisit this in a little bit.
Do we have the Kindness quilt backing fabric? Anybody know? Anybody?
What are you looking for?
Kindness
I
quilt
messed
backing
with your
fabric.
machine, so I don't know what
Like
kind
Kindness
It's
quilt
okay.
backing fabric.
So Mary Lou and Kathy are kind of jumping around doing a lot of projects here, getting ready for a little later this week. They teach embroidery every single Wednesday here. So if you kind of see people jumping in and out of the back room, that's them. So now up next here is going to be this buttonhole foot. So the buttonhole feet that you get with the machine here are really great. However, one thing that I like is actually this one that's sold separate because it's a little different. So sometimes when we're working with some of those harder to work with fabrics like denim, maybe a faux leather, you know, our standard buttonhole foot that we get with the machines that I showed here are pretty good for general purpose or like quilting fabrics. But I really like this one instead. So this one's sold separately. And the big difference why is that you actually have these rubber grip teeth. And this really holds down on that fabric for you. So if you are working with something a little bit more heavy duty or even slippery, the rubber teeth help a lot better than the standard plastic buttonhole foot. And it's also a metal base, so it's a little bit more heavy duty as well. So if you're looking for a couple accessories to really help for those different projects, I always like to recommend this buttonhole foot right here. Especially if you're going through denim or doing the buttonhole fly on a pair of jeans, I like to use that foot a lot better than the standard one. Now, up next too, I've been wanting to demo this forever, and this is going to be the buttonhole chisel set. So, let me show you guys this here. So, to open up a buttonhole, there's a couple different ways, but I prefer this the best, especially for keyhole buttonholes. So, kind of the buttonholes that you'll see on your jean jackets or on your jeans. And so it comes with this little set. It gives you a nice little mat if you don't have a cutting mat, but I always say use this still so you don't damage your cutting mat. And so whenever we open up these buttonholes, we could use this chisel instead of a seam ripper, which gives us more control. So we'll press down on it, and then it cuts it really, really nicely. And then you also have this part here for the circle end of it. You press down and it opens up everything really, really nicely. With this one, I like to use a little hammer just to kind of pound it. I don't have a hammer on me here, but the chisel part is my favorite because you don't have to worry about accidentally ripping through your buttonhole with a seam ripper. So let me just kind of show you what that would be like. Because with the chisel, you have a lot more control, and that's the big thing. So let's say I was using our seam ripper here, you know, and I'm going through this one. I'm seam ripping, but oh no, I just accidentally ruined my buttonhole there because I just kept cutting. With the chisel, I definitely have a lot more control because I'm just doing section by section to open up those buttonholes. So just like that, really easy to use. One of my favorite sets that you could possibly have because it really helps just make sure that you don't accidentally mess something up. Because that is the last step on a lot of piece of clothing, and that's, as I always say, the make it or break it step. So that is going to be the buttonhole cutter set. Now, a couple different feet that we have too, if you are just kind of new, starting out, and you want to get specifically into quilting here, is going to be my absolute must-have feet. So your stitch in a ditch foot and your 1/4 inch quilting foot. So I'm going to show you guys those. And so we kind of use these feet together a lot. So let me show the 1/4 inch foot. And I'm going to actually demo this on the machine here. So what this foot does is it gives you a nice guide to prevent your fabric from going over that 1/4 inch seam allowance, which whenever we're quilting, we want to make sure that we have a perfect 1/4 inch all of the time. So let's cut a little piece of fabric here. And I'm just going to kind of just cut this as is, just to show you guys. So we'll do right sides together anytime we're sewing a seam. And let's go ahead and put this foot on the machine over here. Alrighty, and then whenever we're putting this foot on, it just snaps on like the other feet. And then let's go select our straight stitch. So go to number 3 here. And with that little black metal guide is it's going to prevent it from going over our seam allowance from shifting. So now I did not cut these perfectly straight, but I'm just going to pivot them a little bit. But we could see here how it keeps that seam at a perfect 1/4 inch all the way down. Just like that. Now, if we're going to stitch in a ditch, that foot is very similar here. So let's say we're pressing our seams open or to the one side. And we need to keep our fabric stitched down but kind of hidden. So with that stitch in a ditch foot, it's going to ride right along that seam allowance. And usually we're going to be doing that over our batting to kind of make that stitching look a little bit more invisible. So this is the stitch in a ditch one here. And that center guide will go right down that seam. So we could see here how that will ride right down and prevents that from shifting over as we would stitch down our batting. Now, I don't think I have any batting here, but those are my two must-have feet if you are getting into quilting, especially these ones from Baby Lock. There's a couple different types on the market, but these two are my favorite because you have the black guide, which makes it very visible to know the difference. And on top of that, the guide is curved as well. It's not a straight edge. That way it doesn't accidentally snag your fabric and cause it to pucker. Alrighty, and then we also have the Teflon foot. Now this is a must-have foot, especially for everybody, no matter if you're beginning or you're advanced. The Teflon foot here is a non-stick foot. So if you are sewing over faux leather or vinyl or anything that would cause stickiness with your fabric, I think I totally forgot to grab a piece of faux leather. Which is okay. I could show it a little later. We've shown it a lot. But that helps glide right over that fabric. Whereas your standard feet, like your J foot, or let's even use our N foot, that will accidentally kind of create friction because it's metal on that vinyl or leather, and it's going to kind of ruin your stitch length. So with the Teflon, it glides really easily right over those hard to work with fabrics. All right, and then we have something that is a must-have, which is Shape Flex. So we use this all the time whenever we're interfacing or stabilizing a bag, a garment, or even some of our quilt blocks. And what this is it's a fusible woven cotton interfacing. So we apply that onto the back side of our fabrics to give them a little bit more structure. Sometimes our quilting cottons can be a little bit more on the thin end where they're just a little too flimsy, especially if we're going to add some of those decorative stitches on top of it. So let's grab a little piece here from outside. In fact, Mary Lou has an open bolt. I'm just going to ask her. Could you guys cut me a piece of Shape Flex real quick? I thought we had a bolt off. Okay, so that works. I just needed a little piece. Thank you. So let's cut a piece of this and apply this to the backing of our fabric. It's really easy to do in case if you've never used it before. So we use this for everything. I use it all the time for interfacing garments. Tiffany uses it whenever she is working on bags. Ruth Ann will use it for quilts and quilt blocks. So it has a purpose for everybody with everything with sewing. So there is a glue dot side right here, which you could kind of feel. And then there's a smooth side. So we're going to apply the glue dot side here to the back side or the wrong side of our fabric here. And we'll kind of spread that out. You want to make sure there's no wrinkles in your fabric before you apply this. And then we'll take an iron here and we will press this on. So you want to kind of press in little sections here. And then just really kind of go over it, making sure that it's fully fused to that fabric. So this is a permanent thing. Once you apply this, you're not going to take this off, but it gives us more stability to work with that fabric. So now this is much more structured, whereas before it's a lot more flexible and flimsy, not as structured. So especially if we're adding decorative stitches on top of this, you usually want to give it that layer of stability. Now, also, we have a sewer's must-have, which is pins. So I have two different types, and I love both of these types of pins here. So I'm going to show you guys the flower head pins first, which I really like, and we have them from Nifty Notions. Now, these are just such a cute pin set here. They come in this nice little pink case, and the flower head pins are really easy to use. They're really nice and super thin, and they're called flower head pins because they quite honestly have a flower at the head of them. So if we're pinning our fabrics, they go in really easy, just like that. Now there's also the glass head pins, and these are Gloria's favorites. She likes these a lot just because the glass heads, this isn't her specific brand that she likes, but the glass head, they're a little bit shorter here, but it's also a ball head. So sometimes if I am working with more slippery fabrics like a satin, or I need a shorter pin, I like to use those. But they are both amazing sets of pins to have. I absolutely love those. Now, we also have these Nifty Notions bobbin clamps. And what these do is after you wind your bobbin, but maybe you don't use the full bobbin, you want to make sure that you can tie it off without your thread going everywhere. So it comes in this really cute package. And then let's take a bobbin here. And so, you know, instead of having that loose thread go everywhere, we can clamp it with this little bobbin clamp right there so it doesn't unwind in your sewing drawer, because I am so guilty of it, and I actually need a couple more sets of these. At least I've started it to try to be more organized. Had a bunch of loose bobbins in my one little bobbin drawer is what I call it, and all the threads got tangled. So it's really nice when you kind of clamp it and organize it to prevent it from going everywhere and tying a giant knot. But yeah, must have little accessories. Now, here's something really cute. So if you are a Baby Lock fan, you need a pair of Baby Lock socks. In fact, I should be wearing these dress socks today, but I'm not. But look how cute these are. So you have the Baby Lock logo with different stitches, sashiko stitches, quilt blocks, and little spools of thread along with the logo at the bottom of the socks. Super cute. So it's a fun little gift that you could always get somebody. So if maybe you are looking at getting a machine for somebody, a niece or a nephew that's just starting out, get them a pair of socks too. It's just such a fun little gift that they could wear everywhere. Now, we also have a needle set. So one of the most important things whenever you're sewing, especially garments or bags or quilting, is making sure that you use the correct size needles. And there's different sizes. So you have fine needles, which would be like a 7511. So the needle is much thinner. And then you have bigger needles like that are meant for sewing over canvas and denim and those heavyweight fabrics. And those would be more of a 110 needle. So we have a nice variety set of needles right here that you get a bunch of different types. So you'll get 70-10, 80-12 universal needles. So those are really good if you're working with fine fabrics, even quilting cottons. The 90-14 stretch needle. So if you're ever working with any knit fabrics that you're sewing on your regular machine, always use a stretch needle because it has a ballpoint and it doesn't puncture your fabric as hard. We also have jeans needles, even a twin needle, and then we also have more ballpoint needles as well. So it's a really great set, especially more specifically if you want to get into clothing making. Just using the right needle really makes a difference in your project. Now, another super fun beginning project is this really cute fabric panel here that you can create these stuffed animal pillows. And on this fabric panel, we could see it actually gives you cutting lines and sewing lines. That way you can just really tackle a first project with ease. My first ever sewing project was actually a panel, or not a panel, a pillow that we did in school. And I remember we all had to do a fun little design on felt with it. And I think I did a pineapple, if I remember correctly. But this is just a really fun, easy project to kind of start off with as well. And it does give you all the steps as well on the panel. Super fun, super cool.
Where are you finding all these cute deals?
I know. Also, all this stuff is like on bargain that I've been showing too. I think I forgot to
You've got
mention
some
that.
cute stuff here.
I know. Look how cute this is.
1988.
I'm telling you, those.
Would
I
you not
remember
sew
those.
this with your
I
nieces
bought
and
those when
nephews?
it first came out for little Ella Grace, and we did them. The little
Super
pillow.
cute.
I know. It's super cute. I'm like, we still have those?
I know. We only have a couple left, and I think they marked them down. I think they were originally like $40 or something like that. Ridiculous. But 1988 is a lot better for that. So I also have some thread sets here. So these are going to be some embroidery thread sets, and I think Gloria did mark these down. Right, Sophie?
Oh yeah, 2188.
21.88, and these thread sets are supposed to be what, $35?
Yeah.
So we have these color play thread sets, which are really cool. Now this one here, I think this is the Mardi Gras one, or Chicago. It's the Chicago collection. So these 4 spools here is what creates this variegated thread right here. So they're the matching colors, but really great, especially for embroidery or if you're adding those decorative stitches. I always like to do my decorative stitches with an embroidery thread. It gives it that nice element of sheen that really helps up the quality. Now, the next color play thread set we have too is the Savannah collection. So really pretty pastels, I would say, kind of just in time for Easter as well. So you have a pink, a light green, a light yellow, a light blue, and then we also have that nice variegated that kind of incorporates all 4 of those colors. Super gorgeous. You know, somebody was talking about they were making an Easter quilt and adding some decorative stitching in. It'd be perfect to use those colors right there. Now the last little color play thread set that I have as well is going to be these beautiful purples, and this is the Madison collection. So you kind of have this really nice mauve purple, a deep purple, a super dark purple, or is that black? I think that's black actually. Nope, it's a dark navy blue. I keep looking at dark blues today and saying that they're black. I did that with the iron, I did that with this. I must have hit my head really hard when I slipped and fell this morning. And then you have this really nice kind of rose mauve color as well, along with that purple variegated. Now, one of the most important things too is a pressing mat. So we really love our wool pressing mats. I was using one today. Now this specific size is going to be the 13.5-inch square. So this is perfect if you are on the go or just beginning, because usually if a lot of quilting, maybe you're just starting out, you're doing it on the dining room table, and you don't have a super huge dedicated room yet, keyword yet, because eventually you will. So having one of these wool mats is really nice. They're also perfect for retreats as well that you could use to iron over. As we could see, I'm not going to iron this one with the plastic on, but if I use the one I have to the side of it, you're able to press all of your seams. You don't have to worry about accidentally burning or melting anything as well. And then, alrighty, now, one of the best little sewing fabric kits that you could get yourself to whenever you are starting off is some half-yard bundles of linen. So, like I said, one of those best beginner projects is doing a pillow. And if you want to make a really pretty pillow, oh my gosh, I cannot talk today, is I always say do one out of linen. And especially maybe if there's a couple embroiderers watching too, we absolutely love our linens here. And there's so many pretty different colors of half yards in this bundle. So you have black, you have this beautiful sparkly white. You have kind of an ivory cream color here. And then we have this, I would call this like a tan. And then we have a flax with the sparkle as well. So really nice little half-yard bundle collection of linens right there. Perfect to build up your stash, because that is one thing that you have to kind of start to, that you'll learn quickly, is building up your stash of fabrics, because you do need to have a surplus whenever you have a rainy day and you want to start a new project. Now, some of the last few things that I have here that are super, super important are rollers. And we use these rollers all the time whenever we cut fabric to have a perfect edge that's teed up perfectly. So if we're cutting a quilt block, maybe we're trimming the edge of something off, or even just cutting yardage of fabric, we absolutely love our Quilter Select rollers. And what makes them unique is that the bottom side has a non-slip surface. So whenever I put this on the fabric there, it's going to keep it locked in place. And then maybe if I was trimming a little bit off of this, if this was maybe a quilt block I was working on, I could use my rotary cutter here and line that up and perfectly cut that as well. And there's a couple accessories that we have, but we have different sizes here. So the first one here is the 3x18. So we do like this one a lot. It's a more smaller and compact one that we like. Perfect if you are going on those retreats. And then my all-time favorite one is going to be the 6.5 by 24 inch. I always recommend this one because it's really, really easy to use. And you think that because it's bigger that it's harder, but it's actually easier, because you have these really nice attachments that you could use as well, like the Gypsy Quilter gripper. And this is their original design, and I love this thing. On all of our rollers, we have one of these on all of them, because what it does here is these little suction cups will hold on to the roller really well. I always say you could probably scale a building with these, but they suck down onto the roller here and lock in place so that you could hold your roller a lot easily instead. And it kind of makes it nicer because whenever you're cutting with your roller just like this with your hand, if you accidentally roll off, you could accidentally hurt yourself. So it's really nice to use the handle so your hand's out of the way and you could push down on the roller much better. So I always say the handles are a must-have for any other rollers. And then we also have this really nice brand new one spool thread stand, which I actually have next to the Joy over here. So this one is collapsible. Now, sometimes if you have these bigger cones of thread that you need to use with your machine, you can't fit them on that spool pin that's sideways. They're just too big. So always get a thread stand that you could set to the side. And I really like this brand new one that we have because it's collapsible and becomes much more compact. But this will lift up here. We could put our bigger cone of thread here and then thread around this so that we can actually go ahead and thread our machine. There we go. And then this would sit right to the side of your machine here. And then you could thread it like normally following your guides. So it sits kind of behind and to the side of your machine. But yeah, so that's that brand new collapsible thread stand that we really like. Alrighty, and I think that's everything I have for today. So once again, if you are interested in a new sewing machine, you're maybe looking to get a brand new one to get started off, you could give us a call at 412-344-2330. Option 2 will take you to Steve or myself. And if you are local, we're more than happy to set up a demo with you guys in person and show you all the features of the machines and get you started off sewing. But tune back in at 3 o'clock. So Gloria is going to be teaching IQ Designer today. She has a very, very fun project that you don't want to miss. So, and if you have any questions, give us a call or reach out. But I hope that you all have a great day and happy sewing.